morning, everyone. Could we please start by pledging the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to this morning's Veterans Day Commemoration Hall. The program today honors those veterans who are with us and also all those others who have served our country in peacetime and wartime over the past 250 years. Their commitment, loyalty, and service to our country, to the values for which it stands, and for each one of us ought never to be forgotten. I'm delighted to know that we are joined this morning by several veterans who are alumni and friends of the school, including Steve Garrettson from the class of '64, Michael Colbert from the class of 1969, and Jack Regan, former member of our Board of Trustees. Veterans Day, originally called Armistice Day, was established at the conclusion of World War I to commemorate the service, sacrifice, and valor of those who had heeded their country's call, and in many cases offered the supreme sacrifice. 102 years ago tomorrow, on November 11th, 1918, the Armistice was signed, ending the war that for 4 years had raged throughout Europe, exacting the suffering and lives of millions of young Europeans and Americans. It was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Nearly 5 million American boys were part of that war effort. 200,000 were injured and 110,000 were killed. In June of 1917, 24 Roxbury Latin graduates were in the service. And by October 1918, more than 250 RL graduates were wearing the country's uniform. To offer some perspective, please be reminded that the school only graduated between 20 to 25 boys in those days. 250 is a whopping representation of that cohort. 13 former students were killed in action or training during World War I. On the back of your program, please find a list of Roxbury Latin boys who made the ultimate sacrifice. During World War II, 250 RL graduates served in the US military, and 19 were killed in action or training. Those 250 servicemen too constituted an especially high percentage of RL students of an age to serve. As remember, in those years, most graduating classes numbered 25 or 30. Others served in the Korean War and in the Vietnam War. Several more recent graduates have served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Over the years, more than 45 million Americans have been part of military service during war. Currently, there are more than 18 million living veterans, and more than 16 million of these served during wartime. Over the past few years, we have welcomed on this important day several speakers, typically veterans themselves, who have shared their stories. It was our founders' hope that RL would prepare boys for service. Currently in active duty on behalf of our country are the following: Frederick Kenny, class of '76, William Kennedy, class of '77, William Bender, class of '81, John C. Gillen, class of '93, Jeff Adams, class of '97, Zach Chicolo, class of '05, Connor Walsh, class of '05, Will Burke, class of '06, Charles Gross, class of '07, Matthew Nealon, class of '09, Thomas Buckley, class of '11, Dante Gaziano, class of '11, Robert Powell, class of '11, Josh Rivers, class of '11, Paul Baudet, class of '12, Chase Gilmore, class of '12, Mikey Trainin, class of '12, Thomas Warner, class of '13, Jimmy Joyce, class of '14, Martin Buckley, class of '15, Joe Doherty, class of '17, and Reed Corliss, who just graduated with the class of '20, who's involved with ROTC at Tufts. Through these RL men, we can draw a direct and impressive line to those World War II vets honored by the school several years ago, to 4 RL alumni casualties in the Civil War, and to RL's most famous veteran, General Joseph Warren, class of 1755, who lost his life at Bunker Hill. The inclination to serve our country is a natural extension of Eliot's admonition to serve, as he said, in church and commonwealth. For our school, one of the great aspirations we hope to inspire is that boys will go on in various capacities to lead and serve. Sometimes we hear public servants and others espousing the virtues of mandatory national service of some kind, not just in the military. I believe the expectation of national service, whether mandatory or voluntary, to be an excellent idea. Reminders of the sacrifices that countless veterans have offered on our behalf are in evidence in public spaces and on monuments and memorials throughout our country and indeed around the world. So too are we regularly reminded of the honor of this kind of service by inscriptions that have greeted young people for generations, like the one on the Dexter Gate ushering students from Mass Avenue into Harvard Yard. It says, "We enter to gain wisdom, and we leave to serve our country and our kind." We're delighted today to be able to welcome to Roxbury Latin Mansoor Shams. Mansoor Shams is a U.S. Marine veteran, having served 4 years in the Marine Corps, where he attained the rank of corporal, a non-commissioned officer, and received several honors. He is also the founder of MuslimMarine.org, where he uses his platform of both Muslim and Marine to counter hate, bigotry, and Islamophobia through education, conversation, and dialogue. He endeavors arduously to unify people in an increasingly divided world. Mr. Shams has been featured by PBS, NPR, BBC, and the New York Times, and has made national TV appearances as a commentator on CNN and MSNBC. He has delivered talks and presentations not only at schools and colleges, but also for the National Security Agency, the U.S. Marine Corps, and state government agencies across America. He has led various national initiatives, including the 2929 Ramadan Initiative, in which he teamed up with Veterans for American Ideals to have military veterans spend a night at the home of Muslim families across America during Ramadan, to encourage fellow Americans to get out of their comfort zones and to get to know each other. He also, as you will hear, carried a simple sign across America, 25 states to be exact, that read, "I'm a Muslim and a U.S. Marine. Ask me anything," in order to engage the public in conversation and dialogue. Mr. Shams is a term member on the Council on Foreign Relations. He earned his master's degree in government with an emphasis on national security studies, as well as an MBA from Johns Hopkins University. Please help me welcome our honored speaker this morning, Mansoor Shams.
Mr. Shams, would you like me to begin with the video clip?
Go for it.
All right, here we go.
That I have to believe in Jesus Christ in order to be a Muslim? He's a very special person to us.
Oh yeah, but he's more than a prophet.
But that's okay. That's where we differ. My name is Mansoor Shams. I'm a former U.S. Marine. I was born in Pakistan, came to the United States at age 6. I'm now 34 years old.
So how are you a Marine and a Muslim if they hate you?
Because that's what I am.
It doesn't make sense.
How did I start this project? Well, it's interesting because never would I have thought that we would reach to a state in our nation where we would be troubled or confused or frustrated or divisive when it came to people who followed my faith. The more conversations that we have, the better. Recently, I got to visit the cities of Houston, Denver, Portland, and Seattle. There's always a new experience in general because you don't know how people are going to react and how they're going to take it.
You know, ISIS, I thought they just chopped their heads off. They don't chop your head off. They even have little children. I couldn't even watch it. I had
They're horrendous people.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
If ISIS caught me, they'd break me up into pieces. Some of the questions that I get as I'm out and about relate to a Sharia law. That's a very big one. So they'll say, do you believe in Sharia law as a United States Marine, as a Muslim? Of course, my answer is yes, I do. But it's not the way that you believe in it. It's the way I believe in it. I tell them that it's literally a path to life-giving water. It's a moral code. It tells me not to commit adultery. It tells me not to fornicate. It tells me not to drink, not to gamble. This is all forms of Sharia law. A lot of people are scared of perhaps people who follow my belief system or even look like
Muslims. I love everybody, brother. I love you.
Hey man, thanks man. You motivate me, man. I think Americans do not understand Islam. It's been amongst America for 200 years. It's always been there.
And see, that's what he's trying to protect us from, is the radicals. The ones that are intending to come over here and kill us.
In the larger scheme of things, when you paint an entire religion, or an entire nation for that matter, with a broad brush, and anyone who is an immigrant who's come to this country, ask them how hard it is to come to this country. Okay? My feelings of Donald Trump, or President Trump, has been mixed. It's helped me to see another America that I thought we had gone far past. However, I did take the time to write him a letter and to say that he could use me as a potential resource. I don't know if he's received it. It wasn't a partisan letter. It was not a negative letter. It was not a not my president letter, because not my president technically goes against my faith as well. The Quran teaches me to be loyal, not only loyal, but to obey people in authority above me. He is our president. And there's no doubt about that. Ever met a Muslim and a U.S. Marine? I feel that at the end of the day, if we don't fix these things, this is going to create a larger problem for our country. The trajectory we're headed on right now doesn't seem like a very good one. We're not that different.
That's right.
Don't need to be scared.
Right.
Anyway.
Good morning, Mansoor. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. We could start with a few questions. I know this is a little bit different than we typically do. I can give you some questions that we had discussed, and then we will certainly open them, as we always do, up to students. And so I thought maybe this morning you could begin by telling us a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up, and ultimately what made you decide to join the U.S. Marines.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. Aaron, you and I have talked, we've exchanged emails, you've been very kind, I've had some very wonderful conversations with you. But before I even get to that part, I wanted to share, show off my clothes a little bit. So I'm gonna stand up and give you a glimpse. I'd love to have been in person, but I am here on Zoom. And this is a koti and something called shalwar kameez, very traditional clothing that we wear in Pakistan. And the reason that I I wanted to wear these clothes. I don't wear them every day. You normally see me in jeans and a t-shirt, but I wear these on special occasions. It was because I wanted to bust that myth. There's a lot of stereotypes that are associated with clothes like this. That people even see these things like this, right? They see a guy with this cap and these clothes, and they assume, unfortunately, things like Taliban and terrorists and all those sort of things, ISIS. But what a lot of people do not know is that this is just simply a prayer cap that I use, and there are multiple types depending on which part of the world that you come from, that we wear while we pray. I mentioned earlier to you that I remember watching the Passion of the Christ, and when they show the person of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, that's what we say, because we believe him to be, he's very revered to us. As he walks into the synagogue, he puts something on his head. So just like that, that same tradition we follow as Muslims to make sure that when we're praying, we put on a cap. It's not something that I'm required to wear all the time. And also, I guess another similar example is probably like the yarmulke. And another term that I haven't done it this way before, but I'm doing it this way because I think this will be beneficial in the spirit of busting myths. I brought this, it just occurred to me today. This is, if you look closely, it says qaida. And typically we hear the word qaida or al-Qaeda, which is obviously not a good organization, and in very negative ways. But a lot of people don't know that qaida means something far greater than the al-Qaeda that we typically hear on TV. This is called al-Qaeda, or not al-Qaeda, but qaida literally means foundation or rule. And this is how you learn actually your boys or your students here could literally learn how to read Arabic from just this qaida. And Arabic, why? Because that is the original text of the Holy Quran, which one it was revealed in. So I wanted to sort of bust these myths right off the top. And getting back to your question as far as my background, yes, the PBS documentary kind of laid that out for you. I was born in Pakistan. I came to the United States at around age 6 years old. I've been educated from my elementary school to my graduate education, all here in the United States of America. This is my home. This is my country. And at 18, I was very thrilled, actually amazed to hear some of the names that Carrie had said. I did not know that I had a large band of brothers right here at Roxbury. This was awesome. So I served I pretty much signed up as soon as I completed my high school studies, and I left for the United States Marine Corps. My circumstances were a little bit different. I grew up here in the United States in Section 8 area, and it was a tough upbringing, single mom sort of household. And I wanted to become my own man, to be very honest with you. And for me, when I saw a recruiter at our high school, it initially started from the Navy, and any of the guys who are Navy, no offense here, but I ended up taking the ASVAB test, which is a required test for all military branches. But then, like last minute, for some weird reason, I changed myself that I'm going to go to the Marines, and it was like this sense of greater achievement, being part of the best, and now I think in hindsight, as people know me as Muslim Marine, I think it sounds a lot cooler than like maybe like Muslim Army or Muslim Navy. I think Muslim Marine just had a nice ring to it. So anyhow, that was the sort of background, and I ended up going in, and at a time where 9/11 also took place, the Iraq War also started. So it's a very, very strange time that I went in. But anyway, I'd throw it back to you before I go further.
Thank you, Mr. Shams. So you just shared with us some. So I know myth busting is one of the things that you do, so that because people have sort of misinterpretations or misunderstandings of your faith and the elements of it. Can you talk with us a little bit about, just briefly, what are some of the sort of foundational elements of your faith that are central to you and that people might misunderstand? You talked a little bit about in the Sharia law in the clip we just saw, but can you just in brief sort of give us an underpinning of your faith and the parts that are central to you?
I often keep a quote nearby me, so I have it with me, and this will sum it up. It's by the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community that I belong to. His name is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him. there are only two complete parts of faith. One is to love God, and the other is to love mankind to such a degree that you consider the suffering, trials, and tribulations of others as your own, and that you pray for them. For me, this is the summary of what my faith is and what is essential for me, my fellow human beings that I see as part of one human family, regardless of what faith, their cultural background, or no faith to even say, that they come from, that we're one human family. And my job is to be as kind, as gracious, as merciful, as understanding of others, and especially understanding their pains and troubles. Because right now with COVID, there's a lot of people struggling. There's a lot of people that are in a lot of pain right now. And I think we need more humanity.
Thank you. Can you talk with us a little bit about what you say you gained from the experience of being a U.S. Marine?
Oh, wow. Yeah, the Marine Corps was a wake-up call for me. There was, if you want to talk about gains, I think the sense of accomplishment, the discipline, the ability to sort of do anything. Believe it or not, when I joined the United States Marine Corps, I barely knew how to swim. And one of my biggest fears was that when I got in there, I know that there was this part where you have to qualify in swim qualifying according to the Marine Corps standards, which is not just in t-shirts. They throw you, you have to go in full uniform and you jump into the water. Now, I remember very vividly where I got to the point where I'm on this diving board, which is higher than any diving board I've seen. And I'm just scared out of my life. And I'm wondering what I'm gonna do here. And there's someone yelling to the right, there's someone yelling to the left, jump, jump. And I said, I put my hands like this, and I just jumped. I don't know how I got to the other end, but I eventually made it. So this and many other examples, the experience that I had in the Marine Corps, and what was taught to me from discipline and even mental discipline, because the Marine Corps, even though it is very physical, it is all about mental discipline. I mean, they break you down and then they bring you back up. To me, it's a big sort of pride and honor that I was able to make it through three months of hell, literally, and become a United States Marine. And I'm proud of that badge that I wear that I'll have for the rest of my life.
So you just talked with us a little bit about some of the physical challenges, the logistical challenges. What are some other challenges that you might have met as part of the Marine Corps?
Well, it was an adjustment of a lifestyle. I remember that there are two things that come to mind. One is that for me as a Muslim, the Marine Corps was a very different place, where guys typically on the weekends would pull out the alcohol, hit the clubs, and be involved in things that I wasn't necessarily very comfortable with. That was a huge adjustment for me, because there was a large amount of such type of Marines. I think the other part is just for me, my friend, my neighbor actually, a year later, he had decided to join the Air Force. He was from Jamaica. And I went to his graduation at Lackland Air Force Base as a US Marine. And after I saw Lackland Air Force Base and I saw Camp Lejeune, where I come from, I had wondered if I had joined the wrong branch. I don't know what world I was living in. It was so beautiful to see Lackland Air Force Base. I mean, they had balconies and beautifully cut grass and all that sort of stuff, and nice food, right? And I'm like, what did I go? Which world am I living in? Because the Marines, you get close to nothing. Okay, you're expected to deal with the most minimal sort of resources, the lowest of the sort of standards of things made available to you, and that was an experience. But I guess that's why they call us Marines, right?
So I know that the relationships that you formed with your fellow Marines are central to you, and were then and are now. Can you talk a little bit about those relationships, how they might have changed over time, and in line with what we're discussing this morning, what you all had in common at the end of the day, and how your differences sort of came into play?
Yes, my two closest friends, one was an agnostic, that's at least he identifies himself the other a very staunch, strong Christian. I remain in touch with them till this day, with the exception of one who unfortunately passed away about a year ago. And that was a very painful thing, because these were guys that I was with every single day while I was on base. I mean, this is during off time, during work hours. I mean, you literally end up being, you are brothers. That's what you are. He got diagnosed with cancer. And I remember when his, I mean, just to show you the closeness of the bond, the moment his wife called me and she said that he was in the hospital, I literally flew from Baltimore to Orlando to go. His name was Daniel Medina, Staff Sergeant Daniel Medina, and I literally flew from here to go see him in the hospital. He recovered for some time, and unfortunately, it was the cancer repeated itself, came back, and he passed. However, the other friend, Anthony Kanan is his name, also coincidentally in the Florida area, Orlando. We remain in touch till this very day, exchange text messages whenever I'm in that area, or if he's ever in this area. We've stayed at each other's houses. That's the sort of bonds that we formed. Nothing to do with faiths, cultures, traditions, backgrounds, just Marines.
So during your Ask Me Anything tour that we saw a little bit about in that clip, what were some of the most memorable moments or conversations of that? What were some of the surprising conversations, or the challenging ones, some of the most heartening ones? What sort of stood out to you?
On TV, number one, I have to say, on TV it looks really good, because they have all the photography or whatever, or the video done really well. But each time that I went out there, I want you to just, whoever's listening, imagine yourself, for whatever cause, you pick up a sign and you go in the middle of the street. Just imagine yourself how difficult that is. And every single time that I did that, it was difficult. I had that fast heartbeat, like, okay, what am I doing? Why do I even need to do this? Those questions also arising in my mind, but also knowing that this was for a greater cause, for a greater purpose. But as I was in those conversations, I made friends, to be very honest with you. I remember one conversation, which was, it started off from a very tough conversation to what became a friendship almost. And that was in Houston, where I was standing with actually another friend. I was there for a conference in my religious community. So he was a Muslim, I'm a Marine. So I put I'm a Muslim and a Marine. He just put, I'm a Muslim, ask me anything, And we're standing there, and this gentleman sort of walks by, and he gives this really, really like terrible look, and he's staring at me the entire time as he's walking past me, and looking back towards me. And I, perhaps not the best thing to do, I'm staring right back at him, and I at some point kind of laugh it off and say something to the guy, like, what, next to me, my friend, who's also holding a sign, like, what's wrong? What's up with this guy? And all of a sudden, this gentleman like starts marching forward towards me. He's like, what did you say? I said, what the heck is wrong with this guy, or something to that effect. And he comes up to me, and he just mellows down. He said, well, I saw the sign, and I just saw the Muslim, this is the ironic part. He says, I saw the Muslim part, and I didn't see the Marine part. And I mean, he's saying this himself, and I'm obviously quietly listening. And, he sort of, I kind of call him out. I said, so what if the Marine part wasn't there? I mean, you don't even know who I am, right? We've never met, and you have that much hate towards me. So he starts apologizing. He starts, he says, you're right. We shouldn't be thinking like this. And we literally exchanged numbers on the spot. And sometimes it's thought of that people of educational background versus non-educational backgrounds have a different sort of thinking, but it's just not true. This guy was apparently like a nurse practitioner, and his wife, or his girlfriend, she was like the director of some in the medical field. however, we ended up becoming friends from that. And he sent me a beautiful text message sometime later saying that if I hadn't turned the corner, if I didn't listen to my girl, I think that's what he said, and walked in, we would have never met. And I'm so happy. And he's from Tennessee, actually. So these are some of the wonderful parts of those conversations. I think the greater of America is open and understanding. I think if we make that room for conversation.
Thank you so much. And I would just remind anybody that has questions for Mr. Shams can enter those in the Q&A feature at the bottom, and we'll get to student questions at the end. Mr. Shams, can you talk a little bit about your community today and what you sort of see and hear and experience in your community today and what you're hopeful for?
Well, the PBS documentary that you just showed, it's hard to believe that it was almost 4 years ago, because that was the cusp of President Trump becoming president, and seeing it's sort of, I guess, ironic that we're sitting here today at this point where an election has just taken place, and we're at a very different state in our nation. But if I'm looking at it from that perspective, there's been a lot of damage that's been caused. As I mentioned in the PBS documentary, there was a part of America that I perhaps was maybe naive, that didn't exist. I didn't know that there was so much negativity and just hate out there for people without even having met one another, just from whatever you hear either online or seeing people on TV or whoever your circle of influence is. That's been really, really tough, and it's trickled down to everyday life. I wrote an op-ed in Newsweek, and I talked about the story of my middle school son, who was, one day we're in the car and he's just sort of depressed. And it was, even for me, even though I'm like a Muslim Marine, and I'm talking to you guys, here's my son, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell him, and he starts off telling me a list of names that he's being called in his school, in middle school, of Taliban and ISIS. And one guy, one of the kids saying something to the effect that when President Trump got elected, hey man, I guess this is goodbye, see you later, like these sort of things. And my kids, they've never even seen Pakistan. The only country that they know is the United States of America. They've never even visited. So for them, put yourself, because I know we have some 7th to 12th graders here, put yourself in that situation where you come home and almost every other day there's someone making comments or looking down upon you because they know that you happen to be a Muslim. They look at the color of your skin, which is tan, and you have black hair, for example. Sometimes associated with that part of the world that we're not even Arabs, but associating Arabs even in negative light. So these are the things of like I remember driving. I was in the city one day, and this guy just came up, and I honked the horn, and he threw a bottle at my windshield and says, "Go back to your country." So these are real things. Whether President Trump, and I don't want to make this a political conversation, whether President Trump realizes it or not, these are the realities that his language has turned into on the ground. When he says things like Islam hates us, I'm quoting him, that's dangerous stuff. When he talks for a Muslim bans, that's dangerous stuff. It trickles down to the everyday person who may not be a Marine and be able to say, like I'm able to say, what are you going to do? Because obviously the Marine is a counter argument that whenever I've been called on various networks, it's hard to sort of put the whole patriotism argument when you're talking to a U.S. Marine, right? You really can't really go anywhere with that, right? But these are realities that my family, friends. I had a friend where his apartment was broken into, and they ripped up the apartment, they ripped up the Quran that they found, and they wrote "F Muslims" on his wall. He sent me a picture of it. This was in Virginia. So it's been tough. It has been tough.
Mr. Shams, what advice would you give to anybody who is considering being in the armed services?
I've been very confused about this question, because I get a lot of direct messages. Even though I have thousands of followers on Twitter, I've never blocked myself from anyone being able to access me, whether that's through muslimmarine.org, whether that's through social media or whatever. I want to be accessible to people. I have Muslims that do reach out to me. I've had people come to my house, hey, what do you think? And one of the reasons is because you don't expect the commander-in-chief to be saying things that is something very dear to you, for example, your faith, whatever faith that you hold dear to your heart. I think in general, the armed forces is a great thing. I think it's a great opportunity. I think, you know, Kerry was talking about service to country in different ways. And I agree with him. I think that's something very important and very much needed in today's society, just to sort of wake us up, bring us together, and open our minds. And that's exactly what things like the Marine Corps does. When right now, I think 50+% of the military is not white. Okay, it is a culmination of people from all sorts of backgrounds. So obviously, when you're amongst such people and such groups, and they're your brother, they're your sister, literally, that may end up saving your life, your entire mindset changes. You see, as they say in the Marine Corps, you only see green. You don't see white, black, or anything else.
So this is my last question here, and then we'll turn over because there's questions starting to come in from students. What are you most proud of?
What am I most proud of? Oof, that's a tough one. Proud is sometimes, and again, this is the Muslim part of me. I try to be careful in saying proud, because proud can lead to a lot of things that aren't good. Proud can lead to arrogance. Proud can lead to egos. Proud can lead to blindness, blind patriotism, even to be honest with you. Obviously, on the ground level, I'm proud to have served my nation. It's the only home that I've really known since I came here when I was 6 years old. I'm proud to be able to be in this capacity today, to be able to unite and bring people together to bridge gaps across various cultures, various people. I'm really privileged, I would say, more than proud, I would say I'm privileged even to be here today with you guys, to be coming together and having a conversation, and hopefully leaving here today in a way that you and I both will have grown as human beings.
Thank you. We have a question here from John Fasley, who's a junior. And John asks, did you face any discrimination from superiors or fellow Marines while you were serving?
Thank you, John, for your question. Appreciate it. I wish I could meet you. I could meet you in person. But yes, I did. And it is unfortunate. In fact, just last on 9/11, the one that we just passed, the anniversary of, I wrote an op-ed via CNN. I think I shared that with you, Aaron. And I talk about actually that piece. And I did did face discrimination, particularly when after 9/11 happened. It's kind of interesting because I went in October 31st, Halloween night, is when I went and joined Marine Corps boot camp. That's the day I landed in Parris Island. But that year prior to 9/11 and the experience after 9/11 is a bit different, where fellow Marines, because they very much knew that I was of the Muslim faith, and they knew that the culture, the tradition that I came from. In fact, Pakistan, as you may know, borders Afghanistan, where these attacks were orchestrated from, right? So yes, I did. It started from name calling, Taliban, kind of joking, terrorists, things of that nature. And at some point, I would, for the most part, I would laugh it off. But at some point, I think I had to nib it in the bud, and eventually it kind of started getting to me. And that's when I started engaging in conversations. in a productive way. There was a time where, you can't peek into people's hearts and what they have there. That's not something that I can do. I don't have the ability to do that. But you can sense when you're around people, from their body language, right? If I come to meet you and you're saying, hey Mansoor, how are you doing? I'll feel good, right? If you're saying, hey Mansoor, the same way, but you're kind of like, hey Mansoor, how's it going? I'm gonna have a different feeling to it. So there were times. One example in particular stands out, where it was Ramadan, and Muslims fast during the month of Ramadan from morning till night without food or water. Every 6 months in the Marine Corps, you have to do a physical fitness exam, PFT, where they score you on your 3-mile run, your crunches. They've changed it around a little bit, and your pull-ups at that time at least. And then you have a score that goes into the system. Now, the dates can be changed around. My gunnery sergeant, actually a beautiful guy, Gunny Castleberry, went up to the warrant officer and let him know that Shams is is in Ramadan, and can we do it in once it wraps up? And the warrant officer said no. And I ran a PFT, but there's two sides to this, and which I want everyone to recognize. You have the part, because I think at the end of the day, we're humans. I don't want to make it look like that the Marine Corps is full of racists and bigots. No, that's just not reality. There are people of all types in the Marine Corps, just they are like in the world. Okay, but here's Gunny Castleberry, who comes back shaking his head. He says, Shams, come with me. He takes me. He literally, this Gunny, drove his car. It was like a scene out of a Rocky movie, next to me for that 3-mile run to make sure that I wouldn't pass out. That is the other side of that I don't want to undermine in any way or form. That never happens. He drove his car 3 miles that entire run to make sure nothing would happen to me. I completed a run. I did all the PFT, scored all that stuff. It came out fine. I think in hindsight, I was also I was like 19 years old. I'm learning my faith. Could I have probably put it off? Yes, because you can make up your Ramadan fast. If he had said no, I could have just not fasted that day. But that's something that I thought about. I don't know why I didn't do that at that time. But I could have just fasted and made up that fast after a few months later or whatever, or even a month later.
Thank you for that. We have another question that came in from a faculty member. And the question is, how do you feel about the idea of a draft, the national draft?
That's a very sensitive topic, isn't it? I think I'm grateful to the country that we live in and not having a draft. I'll tell you, as I was ending my time in the Marine Corps, because the Iraq War was going on, there were Marines that had already been automatically extended past their contract end date. And they weren't too happy about it because you're starting to plan your life outside of the Marine Corps or whatever other obligations that you have. And I was also towards that time. So I guess I can kind of speak directly to this question in the sense that, having kind of lived it to a certain extent, but I was actually in at that time where I was actually worried about, am I going to be extended now because of what's taking place? Because that was on, the president could do that. So no, I don't think I'm for the whole draft thing. I think I like it the way it's happening right now. And it's been working really well, by the way, for years and years. The Marine Corps, if you look at the numbers of the Marine Corps, is roughly about 200,000. And they've maintained those numbers for at least a few decades. So no, I wouldn't be so much in favor of it. And now if there's some sort of emergent need, I mean, obviously the president, from my understanding, can exercise, or the Congress can exercise certain powers. But other than that, no, I think it's working fine, good and well right now.
Thank you. We have another question from a student. This is from Daniel Stepanian. And Daniel's question is, while you were serving the Marines, did you ever experience that other Marines didn't trust you as much as other non-Muslim Marines, especially in the wake of the events of 9/11 because of your Muslim faith?
Thanks, Daniel, for that question. I hope not. I don't think so. I don't think that ever happened. I can't think of a specific example that comes to mind that would say that that other Marine didn't trust me. Because I think when you're in the battle of war, I think there's a different just mindset. I was not, even though I raised my hand to go to Afghanistan, I was not sent to Afghanistan. I think that's a completely different mindset. It's about saving your life and the person next to you. So it's a very different experience. I didn't feel that. So just to keep it honest, yeah.
Thank you. I know we have just only a very few minutes here. I'm wondering, Mr. Brennan, if you have any closing remarks for us before we finish our program.
I do. Mrs. Berg, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Shams for being with us today, for telling a story which is so compelling. And as I would say to you, sir, and all others who have extended themselves on behalf of our country, and it's appropriate for us to say any day of the year, but especially on this Veterans Day, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And now I wish we could pray for a country in which freedom and liberty are revered, for men and women who served and died to preserve them, and for the peace that all of us yearn for all people throughout the world. In God's name we pray. Amen. And boys, I would ask you today, inasmuch as we're not together in the hall passing the peace, that you pass the peace to others, that you do it on this day in your own way and on every day, in order that indeed we might live to see a day when we are all at peace. And now a rousing rendition, if you will, of God Bless America.